You know, things can be kind of tough when you no longer derive pleasure from anonymous sex with strangers. Your crazy mom kind of might be pretending she doesn't even recognize you anymore. And that sex addicts therapy group that you meet with, you seem to really not be moving forward on your 12 steps. It could kind of drive a guy a little batty. I'm not talking about my own life here. I'm talking about the plot of this week's film. Howdy, I'm Jeff Goldsmith, Senior Editor for Creative Screenwriting Magazine, and yes, I could easily be talking about my own life, but I'm not. It's this week's film, Choke, based on the book by Chuck Palahniuk, and we have a great Q&A for you. We have writer-director Clark Gregg. This is his debut writing-directing project. We also have the stripper from the film, Cherry Daiquiri, played by Gillian Jacobs, and of course, the star of the film, good old Sam Rockwell, who you might recognize we had in our podcast last summer for the podcast of Joshua. And remember, if you're digging these episodes, don't forget to check out the Screenwriting Expo. It's our biggest event of the year. It's the weekend of November 15th, 2008, here in Los Angeles at the LA Convention Center downtown. We really have an amazing lineup this year of just great classes, our Golden Pitch Tournament, a TV day on Saturday the 15th, which is going to include not one but two panels from TV's Lost, a Heroes panel, and a whole bunch of other panels still confirming. You can read all about it at www.screenwritingexpo.com, and as a podcast listener, you could use your coupon of CS Podcast to save 10% off the price of your admission. But now, without further ado, let's jump right onto the stage as I introduced our amazing guests for tonight's Q&A of the new film, Choke. First off, it's my absolute honor to introduce the writer and debut director of this fine film, Clark Gregg. That's right, High Lord Charlie himself. Right. And now, of course, the star of tonight's film, Sam Rockwell. Love fest going on up here. And of course, everybody's favorite stripper, Gillian Jacobs. Sorry about that. Okay. As is our tradition, here is the September issue of Creative Screenwriting Magazine. I have one for you, none for you guys, sorry. I think we're on page 57.
Dude,
you're in our magazine.
I already have it because I'm a subscriber.
There you
I'll
go.
give it to Sam, who's
Give it to Sam.
writing a
Very
script.
good. Our office didn't get enough copies, and they only gave me one. Imagine that. All right. We always love to start with breaking in stories. So let's start with you. Basically, you have a long career as an actor, and you have a background.
I don't like where this is going. Yeah.
You have a background directing theater as well, which we'll talk about more later. But talk about kind of breaking into the industry and getting those first roles and really starting out.
Okay, this is my life. I got out of college. I was in a workshop at NYU a long ass time ago with Bill Macy and David Mamet. And Bill Macy was kind of an unknown actor at the time in a pink Izod shirt with the collar up, and Dave Mamet had a play on Broadway, and he was already the shit. And they taught this workshop, and it was kind of amazing. And one of the main ethi of the thing was do everything yourself. Don't spend your 20s kind of like trying to play kind of, State Trooper number 7, do something yourself. And so me and Felicity Huffman and a bunch of other 20-year-olds in my class, we formed a theater in New York, and we did everything. You kind of built the set, and in the afternoon you'd rehearse, and in the evening maybe you'd be in something, or you'd be running the lighting board. And then, I did that for years, and you kind of tell the whole story every night in a play, and it's tremendous story training, because like in our theater, we got the seats from, I don't know what, some kind of orphanage or something that didn't need them anymore. So they were really squeaky and old, and if you ever were kind of particularly full of shit or the story was boring, you just would hear them start to squeak everywhere. And it was kind of the perfect story training. And after a while, I was into my 30s and just so sick of starving, and so I came out to LA, under the kind of deluded notion that Hollywood would welcome me with open arms. And it really didn't happen at all. And because I'd kind of come from that background, of just always being busy. When I couldn't get in a room to have a meeting, I just started trying to write. I borrowed somebody's Mac. It was about this big, and I started trying to write, and I had some success with it reasonably quickly. And as soon as I started to get writing work, weirdly, I started to kind of get more and more independent films. I don't know why. It just worked that way.
How many scripts had you written before What Lies Beneath was produced?
One. I'd written one script kind of as a spec that weirdly almost got made by Live Entertainment before they went belly up. And I mean, probably.
What was it? Give us the pitch. Come on.
No, because someone might steal it here. This is creative screenwriting. I'm not really fucking stupid.
Well, you know, if you register with the WGA, you're safe. You're safe. All right, can you give us a title? How about that? So we know when it all comes out.
I'm not proud of the title.
Then you've got to give it.
It was called Fate.
Mysterious. I like it.
Yeah, okay. It's all right.
All right, cool. Well, so was What Lies Beneath an assignment, or was that your first second gig after selling that script?
After Live folded, my agents who represented me as an actor, which was William Morris at that time, they sent it around a little bit as a writing sample, and Nina Jacobson, who later ran Disney, but was then an executive at DreamWorks, called me. I was in New York directing a production of Edmund and Mammoth's Play, and so we have this one-sentence story idea of Stevens. I didn't believe that, because I thought that was just something they said about everything to kind of make you scared and do a good job. And it's about, a couple, they have a house, and maybe it's an old house, and maybe there's a ghost in the house, and at first they think it's the ghost of somebody from a long time ago, and then maybe not. And I was a tad perplexed by what the hell one would do about that, even if one knew anything about screenwriting, which I still didn't. And but I was about to drive from New York to L.A. In this old Nissan, and Nebraska, you're looking at some flat roads for a lot of hours, and I started kind of thinking about ideas. And by the time I got there, I had some really radical, interesting ideas. I can't say that I think any of them are in the movies. But I had some ideas, at least enough to go in and pitch, and she liked them enough that they gave me the job. And I was shocked. And I went through a process where there was a producer, a great producer, and I'm getting older, and his name is gone, Mark Johnson. And I kind of argued with them for months about what this movie should be, and I didn't agree with anything that he had to say except one or two really key things. And it was a really a lesson to me, because I didn't agree with anything, and I was really tempted to kind of like, this guy. But later, when I got stuck, it was one of his ideas in a bit of a different form that really rescued the thing. So since then, I've always listened to everybody, because you never know. Someone you're dismissing as a jackass is going to give you the key. And
like the producer of the film, for instance. Yes.
Sometimes it happens.
Good stuff.
He was no jackass, but
I'm joking.
Future jackasses have given me valuable information. And there's always a future jackass. And I finally just threw my hands up, and I was like, I can't do this. What they want, I can't do. I don't understand. Fuck it. I'm just going to write the version of this that I think might be interesting to me, and it'll be the world's shortest screenwriting career. And I turned it in, and they called me like a week later and said, we love this. And the weird thing is, we have this expensive deal with Bob Zemeckis, and he just walked in, and he was looking for a kind of like Hitchcocky ghost thing. And we were like, weird, here's one. And like 2 or 3 days later, I was kind of in my beat-up Honda CRX driving up to Santa Barbara to his house to talk about it. And he was an amazing kind of generous figure, and he said, look, we're gonna do what we're gonna do with this, but would you like to be the one who does all that? And I thought, well, yeah, hell yeah. I'm not proud. I'm really not proud. And so I kind of stayed on board and was there for 2.5 years, kind of every day the shoot, and it was film school.
Yeah, we get a lot of stories like that. First project, Spielberg, Zemeckis, all the time. No, congrats.
Yes, I've written a number of movies for studios since then, and none of them have seen the light of day. So
you did a great job.
Thank you.
Gillian, you went to Juilliard, is that correct?
I did, yeah.
A lot of people kind of debate, theater training and how important it is for filmic roles. Kind of what's your view on your training, and how has it helped you as kind of you've broken into the industry?
I think Juilliard is slowly realizing that people want to have careers in film and TV. So they're doing more and more to try and facilitate that. Previously, they did nothing. I think the fundamentals of acting training is applicable to theater, stage, or film, so I think that's what I took away from it. Oh, boy. I never thought I would be playing strippers. Having gone to Juilliard, I thought I would be playing Juliet or something, but I'm sure they're very proud of me there.
They're about to be.
They're about to be.
How hard was it for you to kind of get your first role with 2005's Building Girl?
Oh, God. I auditioned for that about 4 times, I think. And I remember the third time I went in, the director pulled me out into the hall and said, just calm down. So I think I was a bundle of nerves for a long time. But see, for some reason, they wanted to hire me, and they did, and I learned a lot. I didn't really know what I was doing. I'd never been on a film set before, and so I was...
How far out of school were you with that?
I was about 6 months out of school. Yeah, I was nannying.
Right on.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then you went on for TV's The Book of Daniel.
Yes. With
some other roles. What did you think changed about kind of what you'd learned on the first gig that you brought with you to the second gig?
I knew nothing about pacing yourself on a film set. I was used to theater where you do the whole thing every night. So I learned how to wait. I learned how to sit. I learned to bring my laptop. Book of Daniel was amazing. It was a really great cast. Aidan Quinn and Ellen Burstyn and a lot of actually theater actors in New York. So I learned a lot just from being in the same room as them in terms of acting. But I mostly just sit back and watch.
Cool.
Yes.
Right on. Sam, you were with us last summer for Joshua, right before you went out for this film, actually. We talked then about your break again story, kind of were you on TV's The Equalizer early on, I believe.
I was on The Equalizer, yes.
But I'm going to move forward because we covered that. That's still in the podcast. It's still on iTunes. It's tough to make it as an actor. You later on went on and you were head thug in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but then you were demoted. You were demoted to just plain old thug in Basquiat.
You do your homework.
I do. Well, so those years when you were really just trying to go from thug to thug, leading the thug life, will it work? How difficult was it for you to just kind of keep going and to have faith in yourself from movie to movie before you kind of broke?
Well, that's funny you should say, because, Basquiat was a day player job, and I was going off to do a movie called Box of Moonlight, which really helped me a lot. Oh, thank you. And it really helped me a lot at Sundance. But even after I did Box of Moonlight, I remember I was waiting for it to come out, and it wasn't. We were trying to get good distribution, and I got a job as an extra in a soap opera just to make some money after, because I didn't want to go back to the restaurant business because I'd already done enough of that, so I went and I asked a friend of mine who was on a soap opera. I said, "Do they have any? What's the extra work like?" And I did extra work. And it paid pretty good. And actually, they treated you nice. And soap opera extras actually get treated pretty well. And they call them by their last name, and they have a dressing room. It's kind of phenomenal. But anyway, so it's weird. It goes in stages. I had a job delivering burritos on a bicycle, and then I'd get a commercial, and it's just from hand to mouth for a while, for like 10 years, and then.
What do you think it was that kept you going for that decade, though? That you said, like, I'm not going to give up. I'm delivering burritos, but acting's my passion.
Well, I think it was because I was in my 20s. That's where it kept me going. I think now, because I was delivering burritos, and I would turn down pilot auditions, which is insane.
Why?
I would never do that.
Was it a dedication?
Because I thought I was, Sean Penn or something. Because I thought I wanted to be, you know what I mean? And I wasn't. I was a delivery burrito guy. And but now that seems crazy to me. Like I would make a living. I would do anything to pay the mortgage I have now. So that seems ridiculous.
Cool. Getting to tonight's film, Clark, talk about how you first came into the project. I always loved it as a book. How difficult was it to get involved and to get the rights to something by Chuck, who had already had Fight Club made by the time you were getting involved with this?
It was surprisingly easy, actually, because in the bizarre standards of Hollywood, Fight Club cost a certain amount to make, and it maybe hadn't made enough back. At least at that time, perhaps it was not seen as solidly as a kind of important film as it is by so many people now. And when What Lies Beneath was about to come out, some people brought it to me in galley form right before it came out, under the idea that nobody had bought it, and perhaps this guy's got this movie coming out. We don't own it, we don't have any money. Maybe he can get it. Maybe if he agrees to screenwrite it, that'll get some action going. And I read it in one night and said, no, I'm making this. The last thing they wanted to hear from me. And I was like, no, I'm sorry, I'm going to make this. You don't own the rights, right? Well, you want to partner up with me, or do you want to become my enemy? Because I'm going to make this, because I can see it and I know what it can be. And the guy was like, okay, it's cool, calm down. And and so I said, look, let me pair you up with somebody. I had this producer, Beau Flynn, who I'd known and had seen some plays I'd done. Said, look, when you really want to do something, bring it to me. And I brought him the book. And when a producer says, when you're ready to do something, come to me, you can usually feel the smoke curling up your ass. And this guy bought the rights to the book within 4 days, and then stuck with it. And even though we were anteing up our own money on the re-option every year for 6 years, while we tried to get it right, and then it was 6.5 years later, I sent it to Sam, and 2 months later we were shooting.
A lot of times when you option a work, there's a time limit at which point the author could stop you from renewing if they wanted.
Every year.
Yeah, I know. So how did you guys convince Chuck, like, yeah, it's been 2 years, we're working on it, I think we're ready to go next year? But it became 6, as you just said.
Yeah, there's no good reason. I was with Chuck the other day, and I was kind of, every once in a while we get a chance to question each other, and I said, you didn't know me. I had one conversation with him on the phone. I said, it's got a lot going on, but I think at its heart, it's kind of this punk romantic comedy. And he said, that's exactly right. Go write that. Please don't be too faithful. And he hung up. And I thought, why? What? What the fuck was that? Is that a trick? It's a trick. And I thought it was just novelistic good manners. And so sadly for me, I labored for 1.5 years on the world's most faithful, basically just reformatting the book into final draft. And, I had all my favorite lines and all my favorite scenes, and it was just deader than a Frankenstein monster on a slab on a sunny day. And I was like in agony at how bad the first draft was. And it really bummed me out, because I knew the book was funny and good. Why did my script then suck so bad? And I finally kind of tried to get notes from everybody, but nobody's notes really kind of made the tumblers click into place. And I finally put it in a drawer, and I went and tried to make enough money to take care of my family for a bit. And I came back to it, and I was like, all right, fuck it. I'm gonna take this thing out as if it's a script. There's no book. It's written by someone I detest, and I'm gonna do the notes. And it was kind of agonizing, but it also, parts of it were hopeful. I saw parts that worked, and it made me kind of focus on what it was that had drawn me to it, because it wasn't just that it was funny. It was about, there was something in the middle of it that I kind of found sad and funny and important. And once I kind of took that step of letting it kind of pass through my organism, I can't think, is there a more pretentious way to say it? No, there's not. Then it started to live and breathe quickly, and I sent it to him, and he kind of flipped out over it.
So you got notes from Chuck?
I didn't really get notes. He just said, do you mind if I send it to my editor? I love this.
That's great.
I later found out, and this was just luck, that the thing I chose to kind of fight for, and I never had done that, I just was trying to write something original, and I always wanted to do something original. I found this guy who was this bizarre kind of, anarchist, muscular Yoda. Because, he said, when I asked him later, why would you give me that faith? Because if anything, you're kind of encouraging a writer to take the book away from its essence. And he said, well, I knew that, he said, I liked What Lies Beneath. The stuff that Beau Flynn had done was cool, independent stuff like Tigerland and House of Yes. And And also, I just knew that you wouldn't stick for the long run this would probably be with material like that if it wasn't yours. And if you did, it would. And if it wasn't yours, it would suck. And how everything he kind of knew in that first conversation took me 6.5 years to kind of get to. But everything that kind of works about it is because he did that. Because over the years, it became more and more mine, so that I was able to kind of fight for it and to kind of do the things needed to make it work.
And I like that trick of split personality, read your own work, pretend you're someone else who hates that writer. That's good. It's a new one. That's
was
good.
Surprisingly effective.
Gillian, what was your audition like? Auditions, as you said, could be scary. What did you think of the work? And with Gillian and an expensive education, with Juilliard and an expensive education on your shoulders, going in and audition for a stripper must have been awesome, as you said earlier. So
yeah, it was not my first time playing a stripper, actually. I'm not kidding. I read the script and I loved it, and I thought, what shall I wear to this audition? And I just bought these ridiculous shorts.
They weren't just shorts.
No, they weren't just shorts. They were shorts that had like suspenders attached to them.
They were like hot pants overalls.
Yes. And I thought, I shall wear these. And I had to walk down Canal Street in New York to the audition, and that's where the truckers are coming off the bridge. So I got a lot of honks, so I thought, I'm doing something right. And I got there, and I walked in, and Clark said, I was going to wear those. And I said, I bet they look better on you. And I knew that we would get along very well. And I had a really great, fun audition. And we were talking about the characters, though I already had the part, which is not really that common of an experience. And then I actually came back in for Ursula, for the part that Bijou played. And
the milkmaid.
The milkmaid. There was back and forth about who they were going to put where.
A moment of madness
okay.
on my part.
And then I got a call saying that I got the part, and I was utterly delighted.
Cool. Sam, do you audition anymore? I guess that would be the question.
Yeah.
In a good way, I mean that.
Oh yeah, no, I've auditioned. The last audition was for No Country for Old Men, and for Collateral for the Jamie Foxx part.
Which role in No
Those
Country?
Are the two, and I read with Tom Cruise for that. The Josh Brolin part.
Just making sure.
Those are the last two. Yeah.
So when you got this as a script, what were your reactions to the character of Victor?
And I met Ron Howard for Frost Nixon too. Say that again. I'm sorry.
When you got the script for Choke, what was your reaction to your character of Victor Mancini?
It was. I thought it was a great part. Immediately, I just thought it was like a great psychological breakdown of a Casanova, and it was a really in-depth character study of a Casanova, and I thought it was a great part. I saw it. I likened it to Tom in Glass Menagerie, or a little. There's a little Hamlet, and just the mother and son stuff, And then, obviously, it reminded me. And then Clark and I talked about all these different films that it reminded us of, and the tone of the Harold and Maude was brought up, and a bunch of stuff.
Clark, when you were adapting it, obviously you had to make changes, as you said before. Some of the things in the book had to move around. Mainly a lot with the flashback of Victor being kidnapped as a kid. Could you talk about just kind of not just getting in a place where you're ready to change the book, but really retooling the story and kind of making it your own a bit?
Yeah.
Did you break it into outline form so you could see it scene by scene?
Yeah, that's what got me to the really bad draft.
Okay.
It was this massive outline where I kind of synopsized every chapter and kind of tried to stick in the same exact chronological order, and yet I always wanted to be true to the book. If you haven't read the book, I actually think it's still very true to the book.
It is. I love the book.
Well, tell me, say that. The question is.
So once you got through the outline,
about cutting stuff.
Yeah, how'd you then put it in a new order that worked for you?
Once I kind of connected to what was so what was so powerful to me about it, because I went through a series of phases. When I first read the book, I felt like this is not like anything I've ever seen. It's so exotic. It's so funny. It's so sad. It's completely fresh. And then when I started to kind of go through the crisis of not making it work, it suddenly became very personal. And I felt like, oh God, this is me. This is certainly something I've been through. And I feel like different levels of it kind of revealed themselves to me at certain points. And one of them was I feel like I have felt like Victor, which is that at a certain point in your life, if you come from anything that feels traumatic, that you don't know how to be close to people, and yet you kind of want to. And that the way that you do it is to kind of, I think you misuse sexuality in a way that where you're kind of like you're close to somebody if you don't pay too much attention to it. And to kind of, function in this kind of hiding in plain sight version of a kind of Lothario or what have you. I feel that that's big. I feel like that there's a lot of people, males to it certainly, and some females I think as well, where in this society, sex is this one kind of thing that's like Victor's character says, that you consume, just another thing like shopping or shoplifting or gambling just to feel better, and that at a certain point you want to start to use it to get close to somebody and you're bereft. And those kind of things, once I kind of connected to that, and that Victor's story being a kind of love triangle about that journey, then it was kind of clear to me what needed to go. And once that was that important to me, my loyalty to anything that didn't serve that mission was gone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You mentioned the flashbacks. The flashbacks are kind of interesting because the flashbacks that Victor has to his youth are all over the map, all over time in the book. And I felt like I wanted to make it kind of one last kidnapping from a foster family by her, in which young Victor can't do it anymore. And he has her committed, because I feel like one of the reasons he's kind of in this shame spiral around her has got to be guilt, that he had her committed. And I certainly shot them in a way where it's this kind of chronological thing of his last thing with her, and it didn't work. Once we got in the cutting room, it didn't work. It seemed like, oh, it's time for another flashback now. And it seemed like it worked in the script, but once you looked at it on film, it didn't work anymore. So it was one of those places where we just started to kind of, what's the memory that feels like it would come up now? They started to kind of feel like they worked a little better.
Figuring out what would trigger it, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Talk for a second about your process. When you write, how many hours a day do you write for? I would, especially at this point, I would go in my garage. I would call it my garage. I'd go back there and I would stay there all day, and I would work about 3 hours. Okay, 3 hours. Hey, that's fine. I
use a thing that Don Roos gave me called Kitchen Timer, which is because I will fuck around. I will do anything in the world but face the page. And so I have this software that I downloaded where you set it for an hour, and I can't surf, I can't mess with the CD, I can't call anybody for an hour.
So it locks out your computer?
No, it doesn't do it. I have to actually obey it.
Okay. Well, they do make programs. There's a
scant amount of willpower it still requires.
They make programs that could stop you from surfing for the web that I've heard some writers use.
I'm going to get that address from you after we're done. But I did that religiously, and weirdly, I would go, I don't want to turn the timer on because I don't know how to fix this thing. You turn the timer on, weirdly, everything gets fixed.
Interesting. And what do you do when you battle writer's block, if you get it?
I don't know. I don't get writer's block. That's just a problem that's really difficult, and I just set the clock.
Great. Good solution. I like it.
Yeah.
Gillian, a lot of actors, when they prepare, obviously that was part of your training as well. For a role like this, what kind of research did you do? I haven't seen you at Spearmint Rhino or Jumbo's lately. Really, did you go out to strip clubs or anything like that?
Yes. I dragged him to a strip club.
Damn you. I was outraged.
I got the part, and then I had to go home to Pennsylvania for my grandmother's memorial, so I couldn't rehearse with Sam or with Brad. So I had basically one day where I was doing costume fittings, and then I said, well, Clark, what would you like me to do for the stripping? And I said, let's go to a strip club, and you can tell me if that's what you want or not. So we went to this strip club by the West Side Highway, and we're wandering around the West Side Highway trying to find a strip club and having to go up to people and ask them where it is. And Clark was a little nervous. I was a little nervous. We got there. We sat down. It was early. There was no one there but us and the dancers. And there's a bunch of dancers who were on break sitting in the corner. And we walked in, and I was like, they are going to be so fascinated by what the hell we're doing here together at this hour. And we sat there for about 5 minutes, and this stripper came up to us, and she said, can I ask you a question? Okay. She goes, you guys work together, right? And I said, yeah, we work together, kind of.
I'm her father.
No. And she goes, and you're coming here after work, right? And it's like, yeah, I just had a costume fitting. Yeah, we're coming here after work. And she points at me and she goes, and you're a lesbian, right? And I was like, no, I'm not a lesbian. But so we lasted about a minute longer and then fled in terror. But
I went back.
You went back?
More research. Well, wait.
This is like my
was
first
that-
week of directing. I was like, this just beats the shit out of screenwriting.
Well, wait, Gillian, were you wearing your hot pants? Were you in
No,
character?
I was not. I was
that a
fully
mistake.
clothed. That was part of their confusion. They didn't recognize me as one of their own.
Well, so after that, you did no research, it sounds like.
Okay, so I went to Erie, Pennsylvania, where my grandmother was being buried. And I happened to have a friend in Erie, Pennsylvania, and I said, you have to do me a favor. You have to come with me to a strip club. And I, for some reason, decided that...
He was bummed too, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, I made a lot of enemies that week. And I, for some reason, decided that I would wear this 50s vintage dress that I have that made me look literally like June Cleaver. And I had on, I might as well have on, pearls and, a bouffant. And I was like, hello, I would like to come to the strip club now. And we're sitting there, and I'm in, I guess I like wearing these dresses. I'm wearing one now. And I've dragged my friend to Juliet's on Highway 4 in Erie, Pennsylvania. And we pull up, and there's a morbidly obese man wandering around the front, and 3 Harley Davidsons parked outside. And I was like, I can't go in. I'm too scared. He's like, we have to do it. And so we went in, and we sat there in the back, and they left us alone. And I watched the local strippers of Erie, Pennsylvania, and then I buried my grandmother the next day. And
I know that means something. I can't figure out what.
I don't know. I was glad she was dead. So she didn't have
You
to.
weren't glad she was dead.
I
You were
know.
glad she was not alive to see you going to Juliet's at Route 4, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know what she means. Stop it. You know what she... Okay.
The shame.
Well, good. So did it help you?
Yeah,
All right,
it did.
That's all that matters.
I gotta stop.
Sam, you didn't have to go to strip clubs for this
Clark's
role.
a writer. He fixed that right there.
Immediate rewrite. Sex addict 12-step programs. I know Chuck, when he was writing the book, he went to one for, I think, at least a month or two and sat in on the sex addict
Sex addict
12-step.
Oh, yeah, we went to a couple meetings. Did you go to meetings?
Not with you.
Okay. I went with Brad a couple meetings. Yeah, we went to 5 or 6 meetings, yeah.
So were you recognized? Was it okay to sit there? Were you in disguise?
Brad and I got outed in one meeting.
What do you mean?
By our escort.
Yes, outed for what?
Ooh. No, we got outed as actors.
Thespians, if you will.
Yes, as thespians. But yeah, no, most of the time I was able to go incognito, and it was interesting stuff.
What'd you take away from it? I mean, what helped you with your character and that kind of research?
It was it's very sad. It's not as cool, it's not as cool as the book and the movie make it seem to be. I think it's a little more, it's a little tougher. Although we have some sad moments in the film, but I think that, it's not like I didn't see a pickup scene, although I imagine that could happen, but it wasn't that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was tough. It made me, I had a lot of compassion for them. And I think that ultimately, and Clark and I talked about that, and Brad and I talked about it, and I ultimately I think that really did help in playing Victor. I think it helped a lot, actually.
I mean, talk about that for a second, because Victor basically, he seeks, compassion, it seems, and he just can't find it. So, I mean, like, was that part of your study or your approach to the character? Somebody who's really just lost and looking for love in all the wrong places?
That's exactly right. He's looking for love in all the wrong places. And I saw this documentary, and they talked about how if you're hungry, you want to have sex. If you're sad, you want to have sex. If you're angry, so it's about expressing emotion. It's about filling that void, and it's about repressed anger. And so there's a lot of. It really is a way to. It's a hostile act, the sex, and he is trying to numb himself. And so I think what happens is a sex addict will compartmentalize eroticism and love. And so in order for him to find some kind of intimacy, he has to integrate the two. And that's what the movie's about, I think, and that's what he does at the end.
Talking about your process for a second, how important is rehearsal to you on your films?
Well, it was really important for this because we did a 25, 30, was it 30 or 20?
25.
It was 25-day shoot, which I've done a couple of these now, and they're murder. I mean, they're really like, you don't get a lot of time on set, so rehearsal is very important, and we did quite a bit of that, and we blocked out the scenes, and you just get it up on its feet and just problem solve, just sort of, and it's great because Clark's from the theater. Clark and I did a play together. Clark's a great actor. He's you know what I mean. So he's like, so it was easy. We could just because we were both from the theater, and we knew just get it up on its feet, and let's see what happens, And I think that's with those kind of schedules, you have to do that.
How long did you guys have for rehearsal?
We did it. I had these naive notions that we would get everybody. We had the location. We had this giant mental hospital in New Jersey that we would get everybody there, and we'd kind of put the scenes up so that I knew how little time we'd have. And we never had everybody in town because they would bring them in the night before they started. Yeah. We did a thing where we had a couple of days with Angelica and Sam and Brad.
We got very lucky with no attitude from anybody. Like Angelica was reading different.
She read
parts.
her stuff, and then she wanted to stay and read all the other female characters just the rest of the day, just so she could play.
We got so lucky.
And then we would go on Saturdays after these grueling weeks. We would meet up at a rehearsal space, and we'd kind of just go through the scenes and try to kind of roughly block them out. Yeah. And I knew the space that we'd be dealing with. So it's kind of immeasurable how much that let us hit the ground running. I don't know how we would have pulled it off because sometimes it would be like 7 pages in a 12-hour day.
A lot of indies don't even have time for rehearsals. So I mean, I think it's great that was important to you and to give it to your actors.
Sam set that as like something that was important, and all the other actors really were happy to follow suit.
Yeah, and you could always tell the difference. The character of Cherry Daiquiri, just for you and Gillian, really quick. Talk about her character. Is she the dumb stripper that she first appears to be, or is she possibly, in this moment of kind of enlightenment, smarter than both Sam and the character Denny?
Well, would you like to take that?
Go ahead.
Both of you.
I think that a really powerful idea in the movie is the ways that people pretend in order to get what they need, and that Victor kind of is doing a lot of role playing. And I didn't have a lot of interest in just having Cherry Daiquiri be this kind of mindless, set of tits that Brad falls for. You know what I mean? And I felt like everybody in the movie at a certain point is kind of pretending to be something else. And I couldn't help but kind of consider that. And it's what we talked about with regard to what Cherry Daiquiri is. I feel like for my money, I feel like that she's kind of pulling a gag on these guys when she's like, it's not my real name. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then later when she says she changed from a blonde because of the cancer, what he was saying. So
yeah, I mean, it was kind of our secret. We didn't feel like the audience had to really be in on it. I wanted it to be a surprise at the end when she's kind of, definitely done some studying of the New Testament and kind of was hip on Galatians.
And that's a speech that you wrote, that wasn't from the book as well. And the Galatians speech. But it was funny because at Sundance, I had never met Chuck before, and he was like, "It's my favorite part of the movie," and I didn't even write it. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't have done the film had it been purely a dumb stripper. I mean, doing this part is not something that I took lightly, and it's something that I'd sort of wrestled with in 2 films previous to doing this one. And I decided to do this because I really believed in the material, and I really wanted to work with Clark, and I really wanted to work with Sam, and there had to be something more substantive to the character, or otherwise you get like a day player, local.
Right off The Sopranos. So Clark, talk about that moment. How did you know that you needed a speech right there? I mean, because it was a great moment and it wasn't in the book.
Well, like I think what I said earlier, it all came from that kind of understanding Victor's journey and what he's trying to get to, and how the different people interact. I mean, I don't know if I came at it kind of from a writing head of there's certain moments that need to work more fully to get him and to challenge him, but also, I mean, I'm usually playing a role of that size, or Lord High Charlie, or something like that. So I'm interested in having those characters have completion of some sort or another dimension, because that just interests me more, probably for some selfish purposes. But also, I felt like, that there's these could easily be wasted opportunities. But, when Lord High Charlie shows up there and he's kind of the antithesis of what Victor is doing, which is kind of cynically pissing on everything. He's this guy who's like psychotically dedicated to the system and what it might give him if he sticks to it hard enough. That had to be something that's important for Victor to come across at that point. And at a certain point, I think Sam's character is sincere when he says, I never do what you do. You've got so much more guts than I do. That's a pivotal moment, I think, for him. I think without that moment, he doesn't walk into the sex addicts meeting available to the fact that they're actually working on the 4th step that day. And I think the same thing's true after those things go down, that unless he actually approaches Cherry Daiquiri with enough humility that she's willing to drop the persona she plays with him and go, well, if you're really asking, I'll tell you what I think about Jesus. I think that information is one of the reasons he ends up at the hospital ready to really commit to loving his mother as she is, in a way that is probably going to be transformative for him whether she dies or not.
Yeah, it basically kicks off the climax. I mean, it's a really interesting moment to add.
If you live with something long enough, you're looking for ways that every moment can be there, not just to be cute or clever on their own, but how they can serve the spine, which is this guy's journey.
It was your directorial debut. I mean, obviously, as Sam said, 25-day shoot, a lot of pressure. What made you decide to also act in it as Lord High Charlie?
Stupidity. I did not want to, but as it moved along, I kind of fell in love with the guy. I mean, I get to play a lot of jackasses similar to that in other movies, but I never got to play the Lord High anybody. And that was a big selling point. And then I had this great cast, and Sam and I had done this, just let's say it, ridiculous fucking play in New York in the 90s. And
which one?
It was
a Canadian play called Unidentified Human Remains in the True Nature of Love.
It was actually a cool play. It was
a naked sex play. I was naked. You weren't naked.
I was naked a little. You weren't
naked
paying
a little,
attention.
but I was naked.
It was in an off-Broadway theater, and it was fucking freezing, so nobody was looking their best. And
exactly.
Everybody was naked, and it was one of those ones where everybody would be kind of, when you weren't moving down into the center to act, everyone would be frozen. And I of course, Sam was the hunky bartender, and I was the fucking serial killer. And I realized about a week into it that I was racing through my murders so I could get back frozen to watch Sam. And I was a big fan, and I was always just kind of watched as he just kind of deepened, and I saw Galaxy Quest, and I was like, oh. It was Hamlet.
Great job.
I thought he should have won the Best Picture, Best Actor and Best Picture, goddammit, Oscar that year just for Guy. And it was certainly one of the things where I was like, he's Victor. So yeah, we did that together. What the hell got us going on that?
All right.
It was awful.
I don't want to know what got you going on that. Sam, part of your process I'd heard was that you would listen to the audiobook over and over, and that some of your improvisations were actually lines out of the book. Is that right? I'm fascinated by that.
Yeah, well, I've done that a lot with different movies that were based on books, whether it be Green Mile or Snow Angels or Choke. And Choke had so many great nuggets. You just had to... So I was always annoying Clark I was going, what about this? What about this?
No, I saw him. He was wearing the last cassette Walkman in America. 24/7 on the set, you know? And I was like, finally, I was like, what the hell's on there? It's probably going to scare me what he's listening to. And I was like, what are you listening to? And he goes, here, man. And he puts it on my head, and it was Chuck Palahniuk reading the book on tape and like an interview with him. And I was like, wow, that's cool. He's immersive. And then when I was in editing, I went, oh my God, he snuck, every improv was just him sneaking his favorite lines back in from the book.
I think it's smart. I think it's genius.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I mean, thanks.
A couple more quick questions, then we're going to open it up to the crowd, just because you're all actors in your own way. People always debate line readings. Clark, did you have to give any line readings during this movie? Because some actors are okay, some actors
no,
hate
I
them.
knew better than that. There's no way to get strangled by an actor faster than giving them a line reading. I mean, it was actually a lesson for me, because there was a couple. Did I ever give you any?
No, I don't think you
I did. There was one or two I tried to give him in post, where there was a couple of lines.
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah,
how you
but that's-
say that. And also, he fucked up my name. He goes, the Lord, hi, Charlie. And it was like, I was like, dude,
Were we laughing when that happened?
I know, we were laughing.
Right?
And Sam was like, baby, it's beautiful like that. Everything I brought to him, I was like, but that sounds a little weird. He was like, baby, it's beautiful like that. And I mean, I learned so much from Sam, because he doesn't fight. He never fights. And I kind of was like, I'd look at it and I go, baby, it is beautiful like that. There was only one time. It was so interesting, because Sam, I can have a temper, and I kept it very much in check in the movie. But one time we were in a huge hurry, and rather than just block the scene, I kind of put my hand on Sam. I put my hand on Sam, and I was like, and then you just go in there. And he wasn't quite getting it. I was like, and you just go in there. He was like, okay, don't do that. And, you know, that's as mad as Sam ever got at me that I knew about. I was like, don't do that. And later he comes over and goes, I'm really sorry I exploded like that. And I was like, when did you explode? And he goes, you know, and I said, don't do that. And I was like, you know, I just had a bad experience with the director pushing me. I was like, I should never have fucking done that. I was out of my mind. I had two producer boots up my ass, and I shouldn't have done it. And he's like, I won't explode like that ever again. And, I was like, and it was such a lesson to me about how much kind of dignity and generosity you could kind of bring to it, even under this kind of pressure.
As an actor, do you take line readings from a director?
Hell yeah, actually,
Okay.
hell yeah. Sometimes I need them, because sometimes, you know, if you're working with a director who doesn't really kind of work with actors, and basically if you know acting, you usually try to give them an intention, because what they're going to give you is going to be more organic. You know, it's always going to be better. They're almost always going to give you something better than what you're thinking if you leave them the freedom to find it. And yet sometimes when a director doesn't really know how to do that, you're so confused by what they're, give me more orange. And you're like, orange, dude. They finally go, just say it how you think it ought to be said. And I won't necessarily say it the same way, but I'll usually be able to translate what it is they're after. You know what I mean?
The guy said no. Gillian, line readings, yes, no, maybe?
No, I don't think I got a line reading.
Do you accept them as an actress, though, if you were given one?
Sure.
Okay. Young actress, very good. It's been marked for the record. The rape scene in the book just cracked me up. And I wasn't sure if it was going to get in the movie. This concept of rape being about control, and then the woman who's telling him everything to do during the rape scene was just hilarious. How long did you fight to keep that in or out? And Sam, what was it like to do that scene and keep a straight face, basically?
The rape scene, it was fun. It was hilarious. We had a problem with the knife, though.
What was the problem with the knife?
They showed up with a knife that would kill somebody dead. It was the prop people kind of, I was like, they handed me the knife, and I was like, are you kidding me? They're going to wrestle around. Someone's going to die with this. And these foolish people, ended up having to run around central New Jersey at 3 a.m. trying to find a plastic knife, and they did, which was the weirdest thing. And
yeah, you're always supposed to have 2, or 3 or 4 versions of the prop. And if it's a sharp, blunt instrument, especially, to have a fake one, so...
Yeah, because it was we rolled into this space in the middle of a 12-hour day that started at 6 o'clock, so it's 1 a.m. I think you basically were meeting Heather for the first time.
Yeah.
And, we went in the attic and rehearsed it maybe once, twice. Finally, they get the knife there, and then, we shot it in an hour and a half.
Yeah, that was
incredibly complicated.
That was intense.
Was it in every draft of your script?
That was
every draft.
Night.
I mean, it's taken. That's one of the most literally taken from the book scenes. Actually, we found the right people.
She's
it was all the
so
producers.
wonderful.
It was all the producers' favorite scene. You know what I mean? You kind of. It never.
I could have seen it cut. I would have been bummed if it was.
It never occurred to us like, don't you love the rape scene? It's funny. And only later, when people kind of would give you a reality check, you'd be like, that's kind of your comic centerpiece is your rape scene. You're like, yeah, I can see how that sounds disturbing, but to me, that's exactly what I love about the material. Is it takes really heavy, kind of painful stuff and makes it into something you can kind of appreciate and laugh at.
What was your budget?
Not so much.
All right.
It was. They don't like me to talk about it, but it was. I think Fight Club was $63 million, and we were just about $60 million less than that.
All right. I'm not good at math, but narration's always tough. You know, you would expect with great writing like Chuck, you would use a lot of it. How'd you keep that in check, or was that a problem?
Again, the early draft was just steeped in tons of Victor's hilarious first-person narrative of stuff, and you need some of it because unless you do, you don't understand Victor's take on this world and how sardonic it is. I couldn't lose the stuff where he's choking for the first time in the restaurant, and you understand how much he's not just doing it to scam these people, but that the part where they hug him and treat him like their baby is his favorite part, that he's reliving something important. You need that stuff. So at a certain point, I just pared down all of it that I could get rid of, because if you don't, at a certain point, you always stand outside of him. And when it goes away, at a certain point, you kind of, that wall between you and Victor dissolves.
Last question for all three of you before the crowd. What was your toughest scene? Clark, for you as a writer-director. Then, of course, you guys scene that you had to act. Starting with you, Clark. Sorry.
Why can't we start with Sam?
Let's start with Sam. I like that better. What was your toughest scene?
I don't know. I don't know if I could pick out one scene. We had tough days, like the day we didn't have the knife and the day we shut the bar and stuff was an 18-hour day.
What about the choking? People ask me.
The choking was intense, but I just held my breath. I mean, the toughest thing was just the time constraint, I think, on every day, really, but that's about it.
Your most emotional scene was obviously the breakdown with Angelica at the end. Was that tough to prepare for, tough to act?
Oh, well, that was tough only that, I didn't know the Jesus line, when he tries to resurrect her. I didn't know how that was going to come out. We never knew if that was going to work or not. We didn't know. It could be funny, but we didn't want it to just be funny. And so, yeah, that was kind of tough, too.
It worked. And it was watermelon you used for the choking, right?
We used some watermelon. We used some other stuff that would evaporate if I started really choking,
You played it well. Gillian, what was your toughest scene?
I think my first scene, which was the
very first scene of the movie in a strip club called Titillations outside of Newark.
What a great strip club, man!
It was a great place.
Wasn't that a great place?
And the very first scene of the movie was this scene where she disrobes. It was huge guts. And of course, 7 a.m, our first day of shooting, and the real strippers decide they don't want to take their tops off. They don't want to take their clothes off, even though so all of a sudden they're throwing cash at them. Okay, we will now.
Gillian, was that a tough decision to appear topless? I mean, what was the debate going on about that?
Well, I had done, like I said, I'd done one film before where I'd played a stripper, and I had fought tooth and nail to not show anything, and I had a nudity clause that was like this thick. And then I remember I went to a film festival with the movie, and someone described it as prudish, and I realized there had to be I had to meet it somewhere in the middle between my own sensibility and my natural modesty and the roles that I was taking on. And if I was agreeing to be in a film with that kind of content, that I sort of had to reconcile that within myself. And then I did another film where I had agreed to be topless in it, and we actually had a female cinematographer who framed my breasts out. She was operating the camera, and we shot the scene, and because they'd been like, well, the frame might drift down, and then you're going to, your breasts will be shown. And so we shot the scene, and I went over, and I was like, so what happened? She goes, I framed them out. And that was really an act of generosity on her part. I sort of felt a little female communion there. And so when it came time to auditioning for this, and I actually got a phone call at like 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. I was with my aunt and uncle and 11-year-old cousin, and I got a call from my manager saying, now, how do you feel about nudity? Because it actually hadn't come up when I had gone in initially. And I knew this was the phone call that was going to, I thought, get or lose me this part, was whether or not I would agree to appear topless, and I so badly wanted to do the film that I thought, well, okay, I'll do it. But that, it's not an easy thing, and
it shows a dedication. I mean, having come through the end of the process, any regrets, or are you okay? Did it turn out the way you wanted to?
I went to the Provincetown Film Festival with this movie earlier in the summer, and it was the closing night film, and went to the closing night party after that, and this young guy came up to me and said, "Oh, I just saw you in the movie." And I was like, "Oh, great." And he's like, "Oh, I like the movie so much." And I said, "Oh, thank you so much." He goes, "Yeah, I just saw your breasts." And I just...
Somebody said that out loud?
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah, and I had been sort of... From the time we shot the movie, I'd been preparing myself for that to happen, and I thought,
Are you proud of yourself, Clark?
It just popped out. I don't know what to tell you.
Ooh. And I kind of froze, and then I went, "I promise you'll never see them again." And and then I thought, well, the worst has happened. A stranger has told me that he's seen my breasts. And then I thought, well, and then my therapist said,
Is that covered under SAG? For our podcast listeners, Clark's head is under his shirt right now.
I'm just so proud.
I was talking to my therapist today, in full disclosure. And she said, "Well, are you going to watch the movie?" And I said, "No, I saw it. I saw it at Sundance. I don't think I want to watch that movie again." I said, "But maybe when I turn 70, I'm going to watch it 100 times in a row." And I'm proud of the film. I'm proud of the character and everything about it. But I don't need to watch it again for a while.
Honestly, until it came up in the Q&A, I didn't even notice you were topless. I was so immersed in your character. You did a great job. Clark, toughest scene for you to write and or direct?
The Lord High Charlie stuff was a bitch, just, because I barely had got the crew listening to me at that point, and all of a sudden I'm standing there in the frilly shirt like a jackass, and everybody's just snickering at everything I say. That was stupid to do that.
Toughest scene to write, then?
I feel so responsible for actors. It's you finally are in the chance where you can help or hinder them. And there was a couple of places where I was watching an actor struggle, with something, and I wasn't coming up with what they needed, and that was really tough. That's the hard part.
We're going to take questions from the crowd. You start in the orange, all the way up there. What was it like working with Joel Grey? Was the question.
It was extremely cool. He's my father-in-law. And so I had just called him up and said, "I haven't really written this character yet, but I think it could be kind of cool. Do you want to come down?" And he's like, "Yeah, absolutely." And he kind of popped down and he showed up with this mustache that wasn't his and these shorts and this whole character. And I think he's genius in the movie. And it was really, really fun to have him there being part of it.
A few more questions. Right there, you, sir, in the blue. Talk about Kelly
MacDonald. The brilliant Scottish actress. She was at the top of my list. I saw Girl in the Cafe, and I was knocked on my ass how brilliant she was. And I'd always liked her. I thought she just lit up the screen in Gosford Park and Trainspotting, and I brought her up immediately, and they said, "You don't understand what you're doing here. This woman lives in England, so she's off your list. We can't fly people back and forth and put them up. That's not going to happen." And about 2 weeks later, Sam said, "You know who'd be really great for this? You know who I love? Did you see Trainspotting?" And I kind of took it like a sign from God. I was like, "Oh man, that's what I want too." But she's in England. He goes, "No, man, she just did the Coen Brothers movie. I think she's in LA." And I was meeting with her 2 days later, and it just she was everybody kind of was a little bit in love with her the whole time.
Another question, right there, right in the middle in the red. Somebody's waving. The question is, are you going to get some more Iron Man love? You appeared in the movie.
Oh, I thought you were talking about something else. That's between me and Robert Downey, and it's none of your business, sir.
Is it?
Come on. We're all grown-ups here. Okay, I'm not. I certainly hope so. I have reasons to believe that Agent Phil Coulson will come back and work at S.H.I.E.L.D. with Nick Fury, Sam Jackson. If begging helps, then I've got a really good shot at it, because every time I see Favreau, I just beg a lot. I'm hoping so, but I've been doing this, Sam and I, we've been doing this for a while, so I'm just, we'll see. I hope so.
A lot of positions open at S.H.I.E.L.D. these days. All right, another question. Right there, second row. How did you guys get hooked up with Tim Moore? Snow Angels.
Snow Angels, yeah, definitely.
I saw Snow Angels because he's at the same agency as I am, and I went and saw it, and I thought his work was so beautiful. And I always had thought he was great from David Gordon Green's movies. And I had this meeting with him because I thought the whole difficulty in making this movie work or not work was kind of finding a tone that could be funny and sad, and that both could coexist. And just the way he talked about it and sold me. And then when we got there and I realized that I'd found maybe the only guy on the planet who could kind of walk in with a shot list of 9 shots and cut it down to 3 and put it on a dolly so that I had actually 5. He did stuff that I still don't understand how he did it. And he's like the secret weapon. He also did Pineapple Express, and he's the man.
Another question. All the way in the back, how'd you come to the decision to change the ending around and different from the original
The
book?
ending that I shot was much closer to the original. It always had the plane scene. There's things that are different about who Paige Marshall is. Paige Marshall in the book thinks she's from the future and that they can't have babies there anymore, so she's come back to the past to get knocked up by Victor. That's her secret. Harder to root for him to end up with her. I didn't want to feel like he was just ending up with another crazy like his mom, so I started to make some shifts there. I never wanted it to be a pure happy ending where the problems are all over. I wanted him to be hooking up with her at the end in a way where doesn't know what the hell's going to happen, and it's abjectly terrifying, but he's going to try. That was what I was clear about. There's another famous scene in the sequence of endings that is the ending in the book where it's a great scene where after Angelica or Ida has died, he ends up back at the Stone House, which is now completed, and because of the television interview where he said, "Bring a rock, come on by, you can participate," all these people who saved him have showed up at the vacant lot with rocks. And once they got to talking, they realized they've all been scammed. And when he walks in, it becomes what he refers to as the martyrdom of Saint Me. And they all gather around him with these rocks. And it's a great kind of thing. And he kind of apologizes, and they decide not to kill him. And we shot it. And, just on that budget, you do run into a problem where the extras who were doing this really serious acting looked like they had the last time you'd seen their work was in Thriller. And the rock house was styrofoam, and it looked like do you remember Lidsville or Sigmund and the Sea Monsters? It was a little bit like that. You kept waiting for Witchy Poo to show up. I'm older than you are. And on the other hand, so then of the one huge fight I had was I was kind of watching myself do it, but I just went crazy on the producers was I need to reshoot that. I need that as part of the sequence of the ending. And they said, okay, if you can shoot your entire day's work in the department store, 6 pages, in 3 hours or 4 hours till lunch, you can have the second half at the vacant lot in Newark again with more extras. And I said, deal, fuck you, deal. And so we did all that in half a day. We went out there. We had tons of extras. I brought in actors I knew to be the angry mob that you wouldn't be embarrassed to look at. They did all this stuff. We had guys with a truckload of rocks dropping everything down. And it still didn't work. And I tried it in 4 or 5 versions of the movie. And I started to feel like, wow, they actually cut a version of this that you kind of buy, but it's 2 endings. And I think maybe there's different physics. I may just be saying this. This may be what I've rationalized, but I think it might be true. Every time there were these 2 endings, both of them weren't powerful. And this one and that one felt like a place where, of all the crazy things you saw, it felt the hardest to believe. And yet there was a great performance. I didn't buy that people would put the rocks down because he said he was sorry. That's not my experience of angry mobs. So I added this other thing where all of a sudden there's gunshots and you turn around and there's this guy, the big African-American guy who saved him in the first restaurant, and he's a security guard, and he makes them all go home or else he's going to kill them. And he comes forward and Victor asks him why he did that. And he says, because you may have pulled some bullshit last time, but I know I saved you tonight. And it was a great bit, and the guy was genius. And it killed me. But it didn't work in the movie. And so I had to let it go. But if you buy the DVD...
Good stuff.
You'll see it.
What's next for each of you guys? Do you have another project you've been writing, directing? Clark?
Yeah, there's a new thing that I've been trying to write, but I've been really kind of going around trying to kind of bang a drum trying to get people to see this movie because it's still a kind of little indie that we need people to go see.
Gillian, something next you want to talk about?
Yeah, I did a film. It's called The Box. Richard Kelly wrote and directed it with
Based on the 1980s Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah, the Richard Matheson story with Cameron Diaz and Frank Langella and James Marsden. So that'll be coming out early next year.
Do you ever have any passion to write or direct?
I actually think my talent would be as a fiction editor.
Okay.
I want to be Jackie Onassis and have a second act as a fiction editor. I don't think I want to write.
I like it. Sam, what's next? Frost Nixon, obviously.
This is it. Frost Nixon, and that's it. Oh, and Gentleman Bronco.
From Jared Hess of Napoleon Dynamite, correct?
Yes.
Great. Do you have any passion to write or direct?
No.
Really? Neither? Not one out of the two?
Maybe direct like a small play somewhere.
All right.
You'd be good. You should direct something.
Oh, man, all right.
Okay, sorry.
Well, you guys...
It's a lot of multitasking.
You guys have been very generous with your time. Give it up again for Clark Gregg.
Thank you for Gillian. Thank you.
And Sam Rockwell. And that's how the Q&A went down. Special thanks again to writer-director Clark Gregg, actress Gillian Jacobs, and of course the star of the film, Sam Rockwell, for coming down to discuss their latest project, Joke. If you dug this episode of the podcast in general, consider tossing a virtual tip into our PayPal virtual tip jar by visiting www.creativescreenwritingmagazine.blogspot.com and look for the PayPal icon. Your tips are appreciated and definitely help out with equipment, hard drives, and all the other stuff we need to keep this podcast running. Of course, feel free to check out my blog, which I even managed to update on the rare occasion that I have time to do so by visiting www.jeffgoldsmith.blogspot.com. You can also always feel free to drop me a line by emailing me at yo.goldsmith@gmail.com, and I'll do my darndest to get back to you as soon as I can. Of course, don't forget to click that subscribe button in iTunes or your podcatching software because that's how episodes are downloaded automatically every time you click refresh. And if you have a minute, feel free to leave us positive feedback in the iTunes Music Store or at podcastalley.com. I'm Jeff Goldsmith, Senior Editor for Creative Screenwriting Magazine, thanking you again for tuning in and telling you to stay out of trouble. Till next week.